Today we're going to replace the transmission fluid and flush the system on this Ford Excursion. It's got the 4R100 transmission. This process is going to be pretty much the same for any Super Duty or Excursion, whether you have the diesel or not. This one's got the V10. Let's go ahead and get underneath and get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to have to do is just pull out the drain plug. This is going to be a 1/2 inch, and we're going to dump it all into this fluid pan here. You're going to need a fluid pan that you can easily drain out into another container, because what we're going to do for a lot of this is we're going to be measuring the amount of fluid that comes out every time, since we're doing a complete flush. That way we can make sure we get the right amount back in. For a complete flush, you're looking at, I think it's about 18 quarts, 18 or 19 quarts, so you want to buy at least 20 when we're doing this flush here. You're supposed to get 7 quarts out of draining the pan. This is a deep 4R100 pan. If you have a 4-wheel drive, you're definitely going to have a deep pan, but you may have a deep pan if you have a 2-wheel drive, because I've seen that as well. Alright, so we've got our fluid from our pan drained out. Now we can go ahead and measure and see how much we actually got out of it. This is going to be more than you can just put in a 1-gallon jug. So first we're going to fill up the gallon jug right here, because we know this should hold about 5 quarts. And then we'll fill up our other one that has the marks on the back of it. So that should be 5 quarts. And we'll check the marks over here. So 5, 6, 7, 7.5 quarts. And I could have maybe put a little bit more in this. I couldn't remember where 5 quarts is in this jug. But yeah, so 7 to 7.5 quarts is how much we got out of the pan. Next up, we can drop the pan completely and replace the gasket. The next time we use this green drip pan here is going to be when we're flushing the fluid out. Alright, so all of the pan bolts are going to be 10 millimeter. I already took a bunch of them out just to save time, so you wouldn't have to watch that. I'm going to remove the bolts here in the back first, and then I'll take out the ones in the front. Shouldn't really have any extra fluid drop out back here, but just in case. This is going to be a really messy job no matter what you do, so just try to get a bunch of cardboard if you can and line the floor with it. So I'm going to support this with my knee while I take these other 2 bolts out. Okay, the pan is completely loose. Go ahead and leave it down here so we can catch a bunch of the fluid from the filter. Let this drip for a little bit. You can go ahead and inspect everything, make sure it looks good. The previous owner told me the transmission was rebuilt, but I'm pretty sure he was lying about it. They put new heads on this engine, and so he told me the engine was rebuilt, which is obviously not true. Heads don't make a rebuilt engine. So he's probably lying about this too, because the fluid does not look good. and it's got 200,000 miles on it. Who knows when it was done last. Let me go ahead and get the new filter. All right, I've got the new filter. Let me go ahead and show you the part number. So there's the Motorcraft number. I'll also put it in the description. And here's the new filter right here. Looks like it's marked Filtran. Comes with a new little gasket on it, little O-ring. Just ran out of gloves, unfortunately, so just gonna have to get messy on this job. Kind of wiggle it back and forth. If you can pry on it at an angle, sometimes you can get lucky and you can get the little O-ring out with the filter. If not, we'll have to pry it out with a pick or a screwdriver. Yeah, there we go. So it's coming off with the filter. That's awesome. See it on there? Tried to work its way off, but it didn't let it. Take the new filter and just press it up into place. Just like that. There are not any bolts that hold this one on, like some. Okay. Get this old filter out of the way in the drain pan. And I'm not going to take this pan out and clean it off inside. It looks really clean. All I'm going to do is make sure there's no dirt or debris on the mating surface of the bottom of the transmission, and we'll also wipe down the gasket on the pan. We'll get these bolts started. Of course, with anything like this, do not start them with a tool. You want to start every single one of them by hand, because the last thing you want to do is have to rethread the transmission. Let me move this drain pan out of the way. It really didn't make a big mess. It's nice and clean underneath here. Alright, I'm going to get all these started and then we'll torque them to spec. Alright, we've got the transmission pan bolted back on and torqued. I didn't video that, but what you're going to do is torque all of the transmission pan bolts to 12 foot-pounds. I use an inch-pound wrench because 12 foot-pounds is kind of low on my foot-pounds wrench, so I just torqued it down to 144 inch-pounds. When you're going into aluminum, it's a good idea to be as precise as you can. That's why I did that. So since we got more than the 7.5 quarts initially, we probably had about 8 quarts come out of the pan and the filter. So we're going to go ahead and dump 2 of these jugs into the transmission now. And I'm just going to fill through the regular dipstick tube, and I've got a little hose going to a funnel that I've got hanging up here. So this process is a little bit slow just because this hole is so small. Okay, now that we've got all 8 quarts back in there, the next part is going to be pulling one of the transmission lines and running it down to this pan here. I don't remember exactly on this one which one to pull, but if you look up a diagram, I'm sure you can figure it out. So you have 2 transmission lines here and here, and we're going to pull the hose clamp. We're just going to do this one because it's the easiest to get to, and we're going to run a hose. I'm going to put another rubber hose on this hard line, and we're going to run them both down into this pan, and then we're going to start the truck, and we're going to run it until we see some bubbles and then shut off the truck. Here's a different angle. We're on the passenger side, looking up through. Here's the radiator, and you can see the line that we're going to pull. I've already got the hose clamp moved. Let's see if we can pull this thing off of there without making too much of a mess. Alright, there we go. So now what we have to do is run a line down from both the rubber hose side and the metal fitting side into the pan. The reason we're going to do both is because I'm unsure which side is the pressure side of these lines. Ideally what you would do is you would find the return hose from the transmission cooler, and that would be the one that you want to drain into the pan. So I'm sure you can get on Google and look at some diagrams and figure it out. I just don't remember. So to play it safe, we're going to try both of these lines. Alright, we've got a couple hoses. We've got a rubber hose with a barb. And I've got another hose for the hard metal fitting side. Okay, at this point in the job, it's really ideal to have a helper with you. That way you can call out to them and they can shut off the engine, so you're not running the pump or the transmission too long without fluid. My 3-year-old is the only one home today, and I don't think he's going to be as much of a help. So I'm just going to have to do this by myself and just run back and forth a little bit, so not a big deal. Alright, we'll get the pan ready. We've got our 8 quarts back in the transmission, so now I can go start this thing up. And we're going to watch until we see some bubbles come out, and then we'll run and shut off the truck as fast as I can. Okay, so I made a big old mess. Now, from my misfortune, I can tell you that you want to put your drain line on the hard line coming from the transmission. So that's the one that has all the fluid shooting out of it. So I'm just going to leave the mess and clean it later. What we're going to do now is take all the fluid we have in this pan and dump it into some jugs so we know how much to refill. I'll get a better angle on this next try of showing the fluid actually coming out of that line. I realized I didn't get it in the video. So the key is going to be, once we figure out how much came out this first time, to never drain more fluid than we have on standby to fill with. Alright, let's go ahead and see how much we got. There's not a top marking that shows 4 quarts on this jug. It looks like it's about halfway up on the little knurled part there. Okay, so that's 4 quarts. And that was 2 quarts. So it looks like we get 6 out when we're using this method right here and shutting off right when we see a little bit of a breakup in the stream. Six quarts will work out perfectly because I've got 12 left. Now we'll go ahead and take 6 quarts and put it right back into the pan. Go back up here and fill from the top. Okay, we've got 6 quarts back in the transmission. We've got our drain pan ready. I'm gonna go start it up. Okay, I think I stopped at about the same time. So this is pushing all the transmission fluid through the torque converter, and hopefully I picked the right line. Ideally you would want to grab the other side now that I'm thinking about all this, because you want to be able to flush the cooler out as well. So if you're doing this, the hose you want to pick is going to be the rubber side hose from the other line that I didn't show in the video. Hopefully that makes sense. Now we can measure this and fill in the appropriate amount. Alright, I'll take my jug here first. I already have 2 quarts in. There's 2. Looks like I may have got a little bit more out this time. Okay, there's 6. And we've got maybe, let's see, a quarter of a quart left in here. Yeah, so just a little bit more this time. I must have left the truck running a little bit longer than I did before. Alright, let's get this ready to go again. We'll put in 6 more quarts. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and switch up the transmission lines, since now I know which one is the feed and the return. That way we can get all the transmission fluid out of the cooler. So the first line that we used was the one on the left here. And we were getting all the fluid from the hard line, which is coming from the pump of the transmission. The line that I just pulled is this one right here, and it's the one closer to the engine. This one right here, and it's coming from the transmission cooler. I just extended it with a barb so we can get all of the fluid out of the cooler this time. We should get a little bit more, so it's no big deal. I have extra fluid beyond what I just showed in the video, but this is an important thing I wanted to show you so you can get all of the fluid out of your system. All right, this is going to be the final drain. Hopefully I've got this thing in a good spot so it doesn't make too much of a mess. Okay, that worked out well. Since that was the final drain, we can go ahead and put these hoses back and top off with the 6 quarts that I have. We'll see how much exactly came out of this pan, and then we can make a better judgment call after that. You'll probably have to go drive around after you do this because you may have spilled some fluid. Drive around and get the transmission warm, that way you can check the actual fluid level on the dipstick and top it off as needed. So that is pretty much it. Since I did an extra drain cycle to get all the fluid out of the transmission filter, I'm gonna have to get a little bit extra transmission fluid. I've only got 4 quarts left, so I've got to go get 2 more. Then I can top this thing off and drive it around and make sure my levels are where they should be. So after you do all of this, drive your truck around, get it nice and warm, then you can actually look at the dipstick and get a proper measurement from that. It's better to have a little bit less fluid than have too much, because it's a lot easier to add it than it is to take it out. If you have any questions about what you saw in the video today, put them in the comments. Thanks for watching.